SQL, just like database, stuff like that, Python. So those are kind of like the tech stack that I teach in my program. It's also Jenkins, CI/CD pipelines, and that's pretty much what is like a good starter kit, and then you can build on top of that. So just to kind of go over it again, AWS, right? There's SQL, there's Python, there's like basic computer hardware, there's SQL, there's Docker, there's Kubernetes, there's Terraform, there's Ansible, and if I didn't say Jenkins already, that's the CI/CD tool that we use. So that's a good starting point.
Anyone else want to pick up?
I'll go. So I'm gonna piggyback off him, but I'm gonna say Azure. You know, if you're trying to get into government cloud, I think Azure has a stronghold on government. You know, it has Azure Gov. You know, has certain locations where you can only access, you know, government regulated compliance, right? So all their stacks in Azure is already, you know, it's pre-built for, you know, for Azure. I mean, for Gov. So GovTech, if you're trying to get into GovTech, you can spin off from AWS. I would focus on Azure. Right? Just wanted to, you know, because AWS obviously has a stronghold on the, you know, whole cloud. But at the same time, if you're trying to focus on Gov, Azure's where it's at. My opinion.
Yeah, to that point, I will add, right, when we say cloud, it's simply just IT, right? 20, 30 years ago, when you built a software application, guaranteed you're going to need some type of compute, networking, and storage. Today, it's still the same thing. You need compute, networking, and storage, right? Traditionally, you had to purchase hardware to get access to that compute, networking, and storage for your application, right? In the cloud, imagine getting access to that compute, network, and storage over the internet using a pay-as-you-go pricing model without having to manage that hardware. Now, as a business owner, I don't have to worry about the hardware. I get access to it, I get to build fast, and I get to sell products and services to my customers. Right? That's what cloud is at the end of the day. So whenever you hear the term cloud, at the end of the day, it's still just IT. But it's the way of accessing the IT is different, right? This brother said he's been in storage.
I mean, it's still a data center, right?
Yeah.
You still have Cisco networking background. So if you're trying to really get in cloud and you don't know it, you know, go with network, because network is all across the board. It's on-prem. It's, you know, you got Cisco router switches inside the cloud. So that's what AWS and Azure use. You're still gonna have to deal with storage, network, and compute, like you said. So.
And even 20, 30 years from now, it's going to be another layer added on top. Let's just say it's AI. It's still compute, network, and storage.
Yeah. No, so they should have also made this when it comes to Azure. You know, it's been spin off the block with shops that are a lot of Microsoft heavy shops. So they can play well with the tools like Defender, Defender Cloud, and Coverts, things that it's easily integrates with. So I wouldn't pick one over the other. It depends on what you think is the easiest one. At the end of the day, the skill set is kind of the same. It's just a little tweaks here and there. So I would say I'm more comfortable with Azure, so I'll go with Azure. Depends on which one.
Yeah. Second everything that everybody said. Because I've been in GovTech probably the last 10 years. Pivoted from AWS to Azure initially. I'm a small guy, so anything small guy, I can spawn from like cradle to grave. But I built it in AWS shops, also built it on the Azure side. But what I've seen now, especially with the transition, is the move to Sentinel and a lot more Microsoft products. So if you're gonna utilize one cloud stack, make sure you understand like basics behind it, like in terms of security, whether it's a SIEM tool, EDR, whatever it is that you're using. Because everybody understands what I mean SIEM and EDR. Okay. Just want to make sure, because I know sometimes we throw out jargon, but I think we don't expect what we expect people to know that, but don't really know what we're really diving into. But in terms of like security, especially with AI now, for me, it's transitioning a lot in terms of like how I, protect like microservices and things like that. What can you guys talk about in regards to your experience with cloud and security, especially with agents like roaming everywhere?
I think that's still a problem that's still getting solved. It's not being solved. It's on childhood waters at this point. So what everyone is doing is it's still in the experimental phase. AI governance has become a big thing. It's really important that organizations put in place proper measures to make sure that they are not voluntarily or involuntarily leaking data out to the environments. And some of these data are critical to privacy, and that's what's the most important thing. We want to keep people's information that are private. And the consequences of that are fines, reputational damages, and all those things that come with it. As organizations, it's important to sit down with your entire legal, governance, privacy, and establish a proper, acceptable use policy. And this is going to guide how people use AI within the organization to make sure that they're not inputting or they're not putting in stuff that will eventually cause them data. So what I do as an engineer on a day-to-day basis is that I micromanage these AI tools within my organization. By so doing, I use making sure I'm setting DLP rules to make sure that they are blocking sensitive data. So the patents of social security numbers, 324, right? Patents of critical data. You're making sure all these things are blocked, and people cannot just put it in the chat board and say, hey, I have a patient whose social security is this, that spit out that. That's irresponsible, right? So you want to make sure you're blocking it from source as an organization, making sure you are, at the end of the day, zero trust is just least privilege. Give everybody the least amount of privilege or the type of money they're supposed to do. Keep everything in a container, well managed, well monitored. So as AI is coming, it's hydra-headed. One day there's prompt injection, the next day there's indirect prompt injection. So it keeps evolving the threat.
To piggyback off that, I mean, you covered it.
Yeah.
So I was going to go with zero trust, least privilege. We build, our guardrails around all of that. So we kind of enforce, everything. You could say, okay, there's a project. Okay, we want to encrypt everything on S3 or in flight.
What does zero trust mean?
So zero trust is pretty much, anything you have access to, you want to only have certain resources in the cloud, right? So it's basically you're trusting nothing, within the cloud. So you're not given access, you're not given a policy to access something. Like say, for example, you got a database and a SQL database in the cloud. You might have access to the database, like as a DBA, to make SQL calls, but on the application side, that DBA can't actually look at the application, right? So, or make changes to the application. They should have read, but they wouldn't have right access to the database from the application standpoint. So that's where, least privilege, zero trust, all that comes into place. You have a policy for every resource that application or that group. You create a group policy where they only have access to that application and they can't write to the SQL database. Right? So just piggybacking off that, like you have, like if you have S3, you want encryption across the board, right? Okay, we have that, but how do we enforce that, right? We have to put the policies in place. Okay, if we're creating this S3 bucket, the only way you can do it is if encryption is enabled. Right. So that's a big project that we're working on now. We have all these projects that we want to do this, we want to do that, but how are you going to enforce that policy? How are you going to enforce it? So that's pretty big right now. And then, like you said, monitoring. If you're not monitoring, who's in your network, I mean, that's you have crawl. You can have somebody in there for months. I've worked. For example, we did a ransomware a couple years ago for in Las Vegas. There was a casino. You can figure it out. I can't say the name, but they flew us out. They flew me out. Team of us. We pretty much got in a dark room. We had to bring everything back from the ransomware attack without paying the ransomware. So we had to rebuild everything. Everything was encrypted. There's keys that are encrypted, but they were in the network for 3 months, right? So if they didn't have the correct monitoring to monitor any who's accessing the VPC, things like that. If you don't have those logs, VPC flow logs enabled, which they didn't, they're going to be sitting in your network figuring out how to get money off you.
And then to add to that as well, like when it comes to VPC flow logs, because I know some of you work in a SOC, again, looking at security in general. One of the hardest things to do is monitor something that has such volume. Does anyone have any like experience in terms of like isolating like the sort of like the one-offs? Because I think a lot of times like we know what to monitor from a network perspective, also from an application perspective. But when it comes to like singling on that threat and making sure that we're not getting a bunch of false positives and that people get inundated with alerts, like all right, I'm just getting tired. And then when that one hits, you're not responsible to it, then your company's alive. Can you guys talk a bit about like how you can make monitoring a little bit more precise?
I would say on my end, so I haven't really had that much experience with like monitoring per se. A little bit here and there. I'm mainly focused on like infrastructure and automation, so like CI/CD pipelines. But I did a little bit of site reliability engineer work. And to answer your question, in terms of like really honing in on like specific like things that you're trying to look for in a network or applications, what I've done is like set up certain automations in AWS to like specifically get alerted if there's like certain events that happen.
Not to mean to cut you off,
Yeah.
but EventBridge, look that up.
Okay.
So EventBridge will call SQS, and then it alerts you, right?
Okay.
So that's yep. So it's basically EventBridge. It creates an event, and then it alerts you.
Okay.
Right.
Okay.
So it's pretty dope.
Yeah, it's okay, no, actually, yeah. I kind of did it like.
I didn't mean to cut you off, but
no,
you started saying event, I was like, if I forget this, I gotta say it.
Yeah, so
We just put that in place.
yeah, so it's pretty much the same thing. When I did the whiteboard, sorry, on the thing, that's the API gateway.
Oh yeah, and all that.
Yeah, the Lambda, like literally, that's what we did to like set an alert if there's like a specific. For example, if you have an event that happens security, ours was just more so focusing on if a certain CPU utilization is at a certain limit, it will alert us so we can be proactive to prevent certain things from breaking. But you can pretty much set the same type of alerts if you're looking for like security breaches, but you just have to know exactly what you're trying to look for in terms of events. And so, like I said, I don't really have too much experience on monitoring, but ideally, you can set up automations where it's like, if this happens, you will get alerted and be more proactive in terms of like, preventing a security breach.
All right, give you an example, right? So I had a client who had trouble with, when someone changes their password, the issue is that the token has to get refreshed. It has to authenticate against the domain controller. When that happens, it triggers an alert in the event logs. So it says this person username that has changed their password or has failed authentication because the old password is probably cached somewhere, just trying to get itself authenticated. And we're getting it so many times, and we realized that the one thing you can't monitor everybody's, right? So you have a crown jewel list. You need to see the people that have the most risk within the organization. So you're looking at the CEO, the CFO, people who make real life decisions within the company. So you isolate those users, and they have the most privileges most of the time within the organization. They can even get lateral most of the time. Not because it's policy, because they want to feel like they have everything. So you set a rule, and we call them correlation rules. You build a correlation rule to be able to know when they change their password, how they changed it, just in the location they're changing it from. That's really important, the geolocation. So you are specifically setting rules within your SIEM tool, whether it's MDR tool that you have, which is doing the alerting for you. You are setting correlation rules to either send you an email or send it through. Most people have a pager. So these are some of the things you can do. Scope out what the risk is in the organization and specifically break the process down and see where you can build a rule to fit those use cases. Let's be honest, we are not going to catch everything. Some are going to slip through the cracks. And when they do, that's when mitigating controls come into play. So the things you do in security is like a building block. You want to make sure you're doing the little things, and it culminates to become the big thing that protects you.
You're itching to say something.
I was. So, to that point, I do want to clarify something, right? When everybody keeps talking about cybersecurity, notice how you kept saying the word risk. Ultimately, a cybersecurity professional, your job is to manage security risk and take that to an acceptable level, right? An acceptable level, that's going to look different depending on the company that your industry, right? It also depends how much cash that you have on hand. If you have a lot of money in place, and as a company and you're okay with taking hits, you're going to make decisions that might not be the most secure decision, but it allows your business to keep going. You're okay with that, right? Security ultimately is a risk professional. All right, how do we implement the right security controls, cost controls, all these different controls, the pen testing, security awareness training, the GRC compliance certification, all of that, right? All that goes back to managing risk, right? You'll notice that, as a security practitioner, you have to know what you have first inside your organization. Right? So if you have a cloud environment, what assets do I have? Right? Now that I've identified all of my assets as a business, now I can go about doing risk management, protecting it. Right? Sometimes security practitioners, we got big egos, and we think that we're the most important department of the business. Truth be told, we're not. We're not the most important department of the business. The camera's right there, right? The reason why I'm saying this is because security as a department doesn't generate the company money. It protects the revenue generating, other revenue generating activities and departments, right? So as a security practitioner, always keep that in mind. Business first, right? How do I protect the business so the business can continue to do and sell products and services at a high level without protecting it without disrupting business? That's the role of a security practitioner. I want to clarify that. We're good.
I literally had a C-level guy ask me, like, there was a vulnerability in, I think, one of the utilities, and I said, we got to patch it. This has been firing up for so long. It's like, what are you going to do? He literally asked me, I was like, well, we got to patch it. Like, if we patch it, then the application's not going to work. You're not going to make any money. So at the end of the day, understand that if you don't make money, you don't get paid. So you have to be able to mitigate stuff, and then there's things you have to be able to just accept, but then also create alerts around that. And it's not rocket science at the end of the day. It's like, if you know that that door right there is the only way to get in, you have to keep it open, and there's a possibility there's a thief still coming through that door. You got to put all your monitoring on that door to make sure that if the only ingress point is going to be that doorway, that's what you're going to monitor. So at the end of the day, it's just common sense stuff when it comes to like managing data and all that other jazz.
If you worked in a OT environment, operational technology, it's a big thing. They don't like touching anything because the moment you even run a scan on a manufacturing plant, bring down the entire plant and there's no production. It costs them so much money. So these things are done systematically and it takes a long time. So that's
and I'm the disaster recovery guy, so I want 2 copies of everything. I want a dev environment, a QA environment. When you go back to him, he said, okay, we can't update these patches. So we're gonna do it in dev or QA first. And see what if we have a test environment first before we push it out to production.
Sorry, I'm handling. Okay, so Tayo, you just retired, bro. How did you just retire? You're how old?
So I'm 28 years old. So to be honest, I graduated college December 2019, and that's when I saw my mom, saw my dad. So I was like, yo, I gotta take care of it. I had like 35K in debt. I took out a 20K loan. I literally took just all credit cards and just like invested into like knowledge. If I knew better, I would have done like business funding, things like that. But essentially, how I retired was, I said, okay, I'm young. If I invest and it doesn't work out, I'm gonna still have time to recover. And I'm a pretty risky person. And so I invested, I was trying to figure out what worked. I did stocks, crypto, Forex, learned about real estate. And the one thing that really changed for me was cloud engineering. So my cousin, he taught me cloud administration. I said, yeah, I want to lock in. Fast forward 2 months, I got my first cloud engineer role, making $135,000. And then my background is in day trading. Now, day trading, I do not recommend people to do it. It's one of the hardest things you can do. But once you are successful, you can just print money. And so I didn't really need to day trade anymore because of the high income I was making. But in terms of if you know how to day trade, investing is like super, super easy. And so like long-term investing, all I did was I said, okay, I'm making a decent amount of money, cloud engineer. I was working for a company and they had a contract with Homeland Security. And I thought they were going to fire me because I was the only black person there. And we literally were not doing anything. It was supposed to be like a cloud migration project. And so they were like Homeland Security kept on pushing on the meetings. And I was talking to like my team lead. I said, yeah, like what can I do? Because I'm like, I feel like it was like setting me up. It's my first cloud role. I'm like, hold up. And so nonetheless, I learned a lot on that job, outside the job. And then I realized I had so much time, and then I just started the job stack. And so I job stacked my way to $489,000 a year. One of the jobs was a 1099, so I was making $28,000 a month. Now, making $28,000 a month as somebody that knows how to day trade is like, it's super easy to just build wealth. And so all I did since I started making money and investing, I've invested 95% of my income. And so, like I said, super aggressive. I was living with my parents, Nigerian parents, stay home, pay off your loan, And so I was blessed to have that opportunity, and I really took advantage. I took care of house stuff, and then I retired my mom last year, make sure she was straight. That was the first thing, and then now I just focused on getting my net worth to a certain number, and then also, I don't know if you guys read Rich Dad Poor Dad. Anybody? Show of hands. And so there's another book called Retire Rich, Retire Young, and he talks about a concept. So there's two things. One of the concepts he talked about is leverage. Leverage is, he says, to make it very simple, wealthy people just understand leverage. Making more money and working less. Cloud engineers, I started with help desk, right? Cloud engineer is the field that I can work in to make more money and work less. That's one skill set. And then also investing. And so all I did was just put those two skills, set up certain systems in place where I'm making a lot of money. I'm funneling that money into a vehicle to make more money. And so another concept he talked about in that book was, what this retirement looked like. That's my mom funny enough. And so we talked about if your net worth is at a certain number, let's say you plan on dying in 50 years. If your net worth, if you can live 50 years plus, you're pretty much good to go if your expenses doesn't change. And then also, if your passive income is more than your expenses, essentially, even if you didn't, work, you'll be good to go. And so, what I understood was I needed to get my passive income to a certain number, and then also I needed to have my net worth to a certain number too as well. So all I did was just use cloud engineering, and then also investing. Put those two things together, and I invested aggressively. So I saw people going out, like going on vacations. I was like, it's hard because I got so much bread, but it's like by God's grace. And then I just really just said, okay, I'm gonna just not suffer, but I'm gonna just lock in for like 2-4 years, and then essentially I'll be straight. And so I created the 1% University. That's like my business. Freshman year, sophomore year, junior year. Freshman year, how to manage your money, how to make a paycheck, how to get richer and richer automatically with automations. You don't have to do anything. Sophomore, so how to manage your money, that's the foundation. Sophomore year is how to make more money, cloud engineering. Junior year is how to use your money to make more money. And then senior year, I'm kind of defining that right now. But pretty much, I wanted to create a curriculum where within 4 years, your capstone is actually having $1 million net worth, and that's just implementing a step-by-step system to do so. And so, it took a lot of time, but essentially, I just use foundations of money management, cloud engineer, investing to be able to get to a certain net worth, and then passive income. So that's pretty much the whole thing.
And the reason I asked that, I'm going to ask the rest of it. Now, most of us, all of us, I'm not going to say that now, really good money. I said all of us here make really good money. And we're not saying that to boast. Most of you probably the same in this room. But the idea is making that amount, seeing what's happened with these recent months / years with the cutbacks. You got to be smart about where you put your money. You got to be smart how you're investing and how you're, what you're thinking about the next steps are. I'm not saying that AI is coming for the jobs like right now, because there's things that the agent still can't do. There's still injections that the human has to take action on, just because you have to reprove some of these things. But at the end of the day, when it comes to being smart about what's coming, it's still coming at the end of the day. These models are getting smarter. These things that they're building are getting more cutting edge. From a security standpoint, I don't know if it was me that talked about it, but you may not need now a traditional SOC team. You may need a manager, maybe 2 seniors, and then the rest you probably just build some agents around it to do the rest of the work. So for those of you in SOC who are like entry and junior level engineers, I'm not saying this is scary. I'm saying this so that you can be prepared. Because at the end of the day, we want you to succeed. For those who are already in the field, for those who are trying to get in the field, but it's going to take work. So Abby, can you talk a bit about like the work that you've been doing to kind of prepare yourself for like the next level?
Yeah, for sure. So to Sarah's point, right now we're entering the age of AI, but in my opinion, what I'm seeing is we're entering the age of orchestration, right? It's no longer, for example, I equate an engineer to someone who's playing a violin, right? And playing the violin is no longer going to cut it eventually. That's what it's going to get to. It's going to be, okay, can you also play the violin and conduct an orchestra, right? Y'all follow me, right? Now, as an engineer, you'd be expected to orchestrate agents. So instead of having, 15-person engineering teams, 20-person engineering teams, right? You're going to have maybe 2 or 3 people and the rest of them being agents. So a couple of things. First, obviously, you got to know how to use technology, right? But more importantly, your thinking has to change. You can't think like someone who's just playing as an individual. You got to think, I like basketball. So you got to think like a coach, like a point guard too. Right? How do I put all the agents in place? How do I make sure they have the right permissions, the right roles necessary to execute whatever I'm trying to execute? So it's going to be based off your ability to think in systems thinking, understand how different components make up a whole, how to orchestrate that. But also is going to be a big deal what I'm focusing on right now is my communication skills, right? Like years ago, right, you had lower level programming languages. Now we're in Python, and now we're at the point where the programming language is English, right? Where you're going to have to prompt what do you call those tools?
Yeah,
LLM, man, so many buzzwords. See, even me, I'm struggling to keep up with it, right? You're gonna have to be able to prompt these tools, the copilots, the chat GPTs, right? And how well you're able to communicate and prompt will determine the output of that prompt. So if you want a high quality output out of your models, right? How you prompt is gonna be a big deal. And I think everyone here is an English speaker, or whatever language it is, right? You're gonna have to be able to communicate effectively, right? How effective you communicate will always lead back to the output. So that's what I'm working on right now. I'm reading a lot more, I'm writing a lot more, right? I'm figuring out, okay, how do you effectively ask the right question? And I said prompt, but that's really level 1. You want to get to the point where you're not just prompt engineering, but you're context engineering. So now the quality of the questions, right? You're not just going up to the LLM asking a question. You're saying, hey, here's all this context. Here's this documentation, right? Help me create an SOP. Here's my business model. Here's what I'm doing. Here's the products and services that I'm selling. Here's how big my team is. Here's my marketing choice. You're giving all this context, and now you're getting an output, right? That's where you want to get to. And the only way to get to context engineering is first understanding how to prompt, but also you have to know what you're talking about, right? Which is why we're not there yet where an AI can completely replace, a senior engineer or lead engineer yet. But I do believe if you're able to context engineer at a high level, and again, context engineering is a step above prompt engineering. If you know how to do that at a high level, you also know how to orchestrate agents. You're going to be part of a small community of engineers that are going to be around for a while.
I want to touch on what he just said. So I'm not going to lie to you guys. I feel like a fraud. And the reason why I say that is because July 21st, 2023 was when I got my first college diploma. Now, I worked my ass off. I learned a lot about AWS cloud engineering. On the job, working these different contracts, I'm able to do that because I'm using AI to literally do the job for me. but I had to understand, like you said, context. I was talking to my brother, I was like, I'm not really a cloud engineer. There's people way smarter than me, like way smarter. But I understand how to leverage AI, so I understand AWS Cloud Engineering, and I understand how to ask LLMs questions to give me the solution that I'm looking for. So exactly what he said. So that thing that I did on the board, like that was like a 2-week project. So I had to build out pretty much like a learning system. And typically that would take 2 weeks, using Terraform, learning different AWS services, putting it all together, APIs, Lambda, the whole 9 yards. I did that in 2 minutes. Something that would have took me 2 weeks, I did it in 2 minutes because I understood the concepts of AWS and I understood how to prompt. But now what he just said, context prompting, that's the first time I heard that. Well, he's making up words. He's making up words, that's what you said. And so literally, I bought, anybody know Alex Milsey? Anybody? Alex Milsey? And so the guy's brilliant in business. And so he created his own like AI bot. And like pretty much is everything he knows in business. Like that AI is probably worth like $200,000. And so I literally gave it my whole business, like my KPIs, my team's roles and responsibilities. I said, this is all of our bottlenecks. The goal is to make X amount. How can we get there? And so because I gave it like the context and then I know how to prompt, it literally told me what to do step by step. This is the problem. We fixed it and it worked. It's literally having Alex Ramosi in your pocket. And I was like, dang. And so the reason why I'm saying this is because I always tell my students I'm not special. Like literally, I just took advantage and I understood leverage. So AI was one of those things that I leveraged to save a lot of time to get to my goal faster by understanding prompt engineering and context engineering. So I just wanted to touch on that.
Yeah. And I'm going to get to you, Dennis, in just a second because you brought up a point earlier. When it comes to also utilizing LLMs, for those, how many of you work in GovTech? I have worked in GovTech. There's certain spaces you can't use certain LLMs. It's barred.
Yep.
So the ChatGPTs, the Claudes, unless you have it like that's trained internally, there's some places you're not allowed to use that. So you have to understand the baseline of what you need. While you can't put the FQDNs, the EPS, things like that, at the end of the day, if you know what you need, you can do that on your own computer and say, give me this, and you can still come up with the right solution and then change just the variables, the verbiages, and things like that you need. But you still need to understand the baseline. And then you were talking about like Azure and just being in GovTech, like the things that are how the government is shifting. Can you talk a bit about like that in regards to like AI?
Yeah, so you hit the nail on the head. Within government, the government cloud space, they block everything, right? You're not gonna be able to use ChatGPT, none of that. So that's right now there's like in this program, they're actually pushing out LLMs within the Gov cloud that they can leverage. But right now it's not even an option, in certain, certain cloud environments, certain applications can't even use ChatGPT the way he's using it. Obviously, you can pull it outside of the cloud and use your own ChatGPT just to get the concepts, things like that. Say you want to, I want to build a Terraform script to encrypt S3 or audit every S3 bucket. You can do that, outside and then pull your scripts or whatever inside, right? Or build your own script to do that, right? Like your Terraform scripts. You can't do it inside. I mean, obviously that's, it's coming, right? So they have their own tools, their own LLMs, things like that they're already building, but that's not even, available. I mean, it's available to them, it's not available to us. I can't even really get too much into it, but, they have their own tools. And then, for AI, I go back 30 years. I worked on AI back in 97, 98. Where we had IBM, we had AS400. It's called like a big blue, right? So basically what this did is like an AS400 attached to a mainframe. And what they did is put all this data in it. This is, when I first learned about AI, this is 97. So it's new, but it's not new to certain, agencies, things like that. They already have this in the government where they're using AI. If you want to look it up, IBM AS400, AIX, they had, this big, huge supercomputer where they're feeding all this data stored from the storage aspect. And it's been around. Right? So,
Just to pick a little part of it, when it comes to AI, I think about it in two fronts, right? The end user and the people who manage. Because I'm a die-hard security person. I'm die on it to protect everything security, right? And I have a big problem with where the data is eventually going, right? Yeah, we're going to talk about cloud. We don't know where our cloud data is going anyways, right? So I think the game changer is going to be when a solution is built that is able to tag the data that you input into an LLM, know exactly where it sits, and reports the environmental hygiene within where it sits, right? And I think some vendors are approaching that. I could talk about Veronis. They built a solution, an agentic solution that kind of follows your data to see where it's kind of going, but just gives you a little bit. If there's a block, it's not able to go past that. And from the end user's perspective, it's nice and great, it's sweet, and the communication bit of it, like what you already said, you need to know what you're asking, you need to put context around it. I love it. But fundamentally, you need to understand what you are going to put into it. And I was talking to somebody the last time, and I was saying that no matter how smart you are, if you're unable to put that smartness on paper or speak the words out, nobody will know. So communication is going to be a big part of how you're able to use AI and use it effectively. Because no matter how smart you could be Einstein, if you don't speak, nobody will know. If you don't write it, if you don't write an article, document, nobody's going to know. So you're going to have to prove it. And how you do it is learn how to communicate. And that's one of the personal training programs I've enrolled myself into, how to communicate and communicate effectively. I'm not too great at it because as engineers, we kind of, geeky and we want to stay in our own lane. But also the security part of it it's really important to me. You can't just because your organization wouldn't allow you can't just go put sensitive data into your personal stuff. It's irresponsible. Let's not do that. It's not. You need to protect the others like you protect yourself. That's what I'm saying.
Cool. Well, we're running low on time. We'll turn it over to you all. Any questions for this tool? Oh, we got a bunch. All right. I'll let the lady go first. Yeah.
Yes, thank you so much for speaking on AI and cloud and security and things like that. So you spoke about context and LLM, correct? So I guess what skills, what certification can lead you to, get into that space and get more experience?
I will say, I still think we're relatively early. So most certifications that are AI focused, the value that you'll get out of them is going to be very surface level. Y'all correct me if I'm wrong, but
I have AI, I have Azure
yeah.
for 2 years. Azure AI, which is it's just more around the tools, things like that. It's not really, digging deep into where your data's lying once it hits,
Yeah.
So it really just focuses on all the Azure tools that you can use for AI. AWS, you have Bedrock, right? So.
Do you have the AI 900 or?
Yeah, I have Easy 900.
He has like 400 certs.
Yeah.
I'll say, so I'm really huge on experience. I got my degree, I got 3 certifications, I was still driving reads. And so, if you want to really get more exposed to AI, actually just start using it every day. Start to actually build things in your own personal life. If you sports bet, try to build your own sports betting. That's crazy. Yeah. One of my students. So
It's not financial advice. Africans and Tech is a community podcast. We are not financial advisors. We're good. No nonsense.
Yeah, my big thing is like if you want to learn something, just like actually try to build things. The VP of engineering at one of my companies, something that I saw him do, and I thought he knows everything. He was using a AWS service, I think it was like ETL, image builder or something like that. So my main point is he literally like researched it. He understood the basics. He tried to build something, just like play with it. And then once he kind of understood a basic level and how to apply it, he tried to implement that with a specific use case. And so like I would say that approach has helped me in terms of like if you don't understand something, if you want to like learn more about it, honestly just play with it, try to build something.
Let me pick back real quick. So AWS has on their website, they have use cases of hundreds and hundreds. So you can use those projects as like a template. Okay, you go in there, you find a use case. Say for example, you want to automate, replication from AZ, different AZs. You can look at that use case in the healthcare environment and look at all the things they had to set up, like the HIPAA compliance and all that, all that infrastructure, the architecture for HIPAA, it's there already, right? So that's when then you go back in ChatGPT and say, okay, I want to build this infrastructure. I want to be able to serve HIPAA clients, and I have to have the security posture set up like this customer that I looked up the use case for. Put that in ChatGPT and build your own project, right? So it's amazing.
I was talking about certification with
That's right.
it's AI certification for people who are in security and want to learn how to govern security. It's my ISACA. It's the Advanced AI Security Manager. I'm preparing for it, so if anybody would like to, they could look into it. But you need to have a CISSP or a SISM to be able to get that. So.
And I would just second with what Tayo said about experience. That's kind of how I got in. Like I did boot camps, but it was experience. I'm probably doing things that my principal engineers when I started never did. And the only reason because I was just hungry to learn.
Yeah.
Like I went out in Python and I think I built a Swift app. But like a bunch of stuff. I'm not a software developer. I just tried stuff. But it's all about how bad you want it and how much you want to to grow. So when I started in Linux, saying like iNodes and a few other things, I'm like, oh, what the heck is this? I have no freaking clue how this stuff works. But at the end of the day, you research, you learn, you grow through it, and you get better. There's a free tool, NA. It's not free, but you can use it for 14 days free. You can build agents to do a bunch of different things. NA. Yeah. So I did that. I heard about it. I literally just built an agent for like email prompts and some other stuff. It's free, just me learning stuff. But at the end of the day, that's something you can use when you're speaking to a recruiter or to the hiring manager. Those are the literal experiences you can use. You can talk about those because you build these things. They have a shortcuts app. If you guys know on your phone, I built shortcuts app with like scripts and stuff. Literally on my phone. But you gotta be hungry for this stuff.
Hi everyone. I just want to contribute to what she said regarding to AI. And we can't talk about AI without talking about data. Regarding to data, how do you clean the data? How do you model it? How do you run some sort of queries and Python and stuff like that? And again, for certifications, precisely, we want to think about for the Azure route, we want to think about deeply monitoring. Has become a data scientist, because technically data scientists use those models. I've worked with one of you in to build some LSTMs, to build some, you run some confusion metrics, just testing true positive, false positives, and likes of them to be sure that the model aligns with a specific use case. So and afterwards, you can now talk about the AI. AI is more like the implementation of those models. You want to be sure that you build those models accurate enough to make the prediction seamless and make the prediction very precise. Then also you want to talk about the automation part, then you want to think about the ML ops, where you automate those processes in some CI/CD pipelines to be sure that as you are using an ADF for your ETL process, I think you talked about ETL. Then you are also able to automate all of this process where your models are being predicted, and whenever there's new changes to the repo or whatever it is, then it automatically triggers and then all those things. So that would be a good route, and that would be a good way to get that.
Azure Power Power BI as well.
Yeah, sure. Power BI, PDF, all that stuff.
And just to add to that as well, I think when it comes, I think Dennis, you had said this when it comes to like the data piece, it's the most important aspect of it.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, it might have been Abby, you said this, like the stack's still the same.
Stack
Data, you gotta store it somewhere,
Yeah.
and you need to be able to protect it and monitor it.
Yep.
Regardless whether you're using agents, whether you're using machine learning, it doesn't matter. Like it's still the same. You have to access it, it has to be stored somewhere, and somebody has to protect it. So if you understand those three principles, whether you work with microservices or you work with general apps that are built services, it doesn't really matter. It's still the same concepts. So just think about those, like where's the data stored? How am I going to access it? What are the tiers to get to it? Like if you understand that, like it makes things a lot seamless. It's a lot easier. You have a question, right, Bill?
Yeah, definitely. So I know we talked about like skill sets and as well as financials. What is the better way to monetize our skill sets? W-2 employment is great, but I think that as you continue your career, what are other ways outside of W-2 employment or jobs that you can better monetize your skill set?
So I'll say this, one of my students, I forgot what he said, but I told him, you have cloud engineering, right? W-2 is not the only way to make money. You can do 1099, you can do C2C, you can even teach, you can make an ebook, you can make a course. It's like, at the end of the day, the skill set that you have is valuable. As long as you're able to solve a problem, it's like business 101. If somebody has a problem and you know how to solve it, you can exchange that solution for the value that you have, for money, sorry. And so, just to answer your question, whatever you are learning, you can even ask ChatGPT, what are all the ways that I can make money from this skill set? And it doesn't have to be the traditional route in terms of getting a job. And so,
Yeah, I think we're caught up with having to graduate or doing a boot camp and then getting a job. You can set up a business like he did. You can set your own business up and do 1099, just whatever your JCR tech or whatever, and start sending your resume out for only corp job. Corp to corp or 1099, right? So you don't have to just say, okay, I want a W-2 job, I want to work for the fans, right? I think we get too caught up with I need a job where you can make more money doing 1099 than job stuff, right?
When you said FANG, that's Facebook, Amazon,